Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Greg Capullo Day, so we're taking a look at the next issue of his early run at Marvel on Quasar. This is issue number 36, cover dated July 1992, when Greg Capullo was not yet a household name in comic books and just another guy starting out. But his art has vastly improved since the first few issues of Quasar. A new inker a few issues ago, really helped, and I feel like he's really come into his own last issue in this issue, and I'm recognizing a lot of the Greg Capullo stuff that even we can still kind of pick up on his modern work today. Starting off with this cover, there's something that he kind of is doing compositionally here that I think is cool, and that he does throughout the whole issue. The Soul Eater, right, who was introduced last issue, really big on a double page splash, vertically turned, right? We saw pretty much his whole body in kind of a cool foreshortened Kirby pose. You can check last week's review of Quasar for that one. And because he's established that, it feels like in this issue here, he's just going nuts with super tight crops because the Soul Eater is supposed to be insanely huge as opposed to our regular cast of characters. So to the point where on this cover, if you were to look at this, I don't know if you would even know that this is the Soul Eater's teeth, his eyes, and his big gaping mouth here, sucking in our heroes. And that's something he's going to do a lot of throughout this issue. So to get across the idea of scale and how big the Soul Eater is, he crops him in real tight. And I don't know that I've seen, most times when you see really big characters in comic books, what they tend to do is make sure that he's all in the frame and really big, obviously, so that the characters in the foreground are drawn very small. Capullo kind of foregoes that and just has extreme close-up crops of Soul Eater, as I'll show you throughout the issue and as he's done here on the cover. So it's kind of a visual device that he uses throughout that I haven't seen a lot of artists use. So I thought I'd mention it, and I kind of picked up on it as I was looking through the issue. Right off the bat with the first page, he's really trying to drive home the point of the difference in scale. I'm not exactly even sure which part of the Soul Eater this is. I just recognize him from the coloring of it. Maybe this is a fist kind of, or some fingers. I'm not quite sure. And, you know, drawing these characters very, very small on the page here, right, our main antagonist, really drives home that point of how big he is. So nice way to start off here. Mark Gruenwald is the writer, Greg Capullo is the penciler, Harry Candelario is the inker, Janice Chang letter, and Paul Becton is the colorist. So more examples of that. So really tight close-up shot of the Soul Eater here, enough that we can recognize his face. And yeah, the characters, once again, very small here, which again, I think works really well all throughout this issue. And I'll point it out as often as I see it. So here's another shot of that, right? Just the mouth. And it feels like one of these issues that as an artist is probably fun to draw because you're having to draw so much space and so little, you know, actual human backgrounds or earth backgrounds like buildings and streets and perspective and stuff. So he's kind of going nuts on this one, which is understandable. I feel like he's having a lot of fun with the Sun Eater. Let me check that again. The Soul Eater, excuse me, and how to interpret him visually. Very rarely do we get kind of smaller shots of them like we do here, you know, but I think it's important in each issue that we actually get one good shot of the Soul Eater so that, you know, if we haven't read the previous issue, we know what's going on. A bit of a B story here with the ladies and meeting up with this guy who's hitchhiking, and I'll show you later. We'll get some closer up looks at his design here. Kind of reminds me, I mean, this is the period just a little bit post G.I. Joe. I think G.I. Joe comics are still coming out, but there's kind of a Dreadnought, kind of Mad Max vibe to this guy that's I feel is kind of probably a little bit inspired by those types of G.I. Joe characters, excuse me. Great dynamic action shot of Quasar here, kind of that Jim Lee, you know, jumping at you with the arms forward pose, right? Similar to stuff that Jim Lee would do for Wolverine and Captain America, right? There's those classic shots that we probably all recognize. Bit of a backstory to the Soul Eater, right? Lots to read, not that interesting to be honest. Flashback is well done. You get a sense, even though the colors don't change necessarily, like sometimes they do in flashbacks, you do get a clear sense that we're going back and, you know, telling a bit of a flashback story. Here, kind of an interesting thing where, I guess similar to Green Lantern, Quasar's powers, he can kind of manifest things out of his energy, you know, physical objects. So kind of creates a huge razor blade here to attack the Soul Eater. Another good shot here, like I said, just cropped so closely and just bits of the Soul Eater in the panel so that, you know, we understand the scale and size of it. That's what the layouts here really get across the girth and the size of the Soul Eater, and I think that's really clever and really well done. I'm seeing less and less of the amateur kind of little bits of mistakes and amateurish bits of art that we were seeing in early issues. At this point, Capullo's in full command of the storyline, the composition, you know, the layouts and stuff, and he's doing a really good dynamic job. Also, I will say this, I mentioned past issues, you know, Quasar almost looked a little bit effeminate, a little effete. I feel like Capullo's done away with that and is now, unless it's an extreme close-up like here where we can see the eyelashes, he's not making those eyelashes as obvious as before, which kind of made him look a little bit slightly drag queenish, I guess is how I describe it. Another great close-up crop of the Soul Eater here. Something about his design I like. It just looks really fun to draw. Like, it's not complicated and very easy to you know, move around and exaggerate and make look cool, I guess, for lack of a better term. We're back to the B story with our Dreadnought-like character here. He's smoking, right? Something that'll go away from Marvel Comics and DC Comics pretty soon after this, and maybe the mid-90s, early 2000s. Characters are not allowed to smoke anymore. I've mentioned this a lot just because I think it's kind of stupid. I don't think that by having a character in your book smoking in any way encourages others to smoke, right? Or kids to smoke, you know, as comics back then were still kind of seen as being just for kids or geared towards kids. Obviously, they were. So guys like Nick Fury, Wolverine, the Thing that used to smoke and smoke cigars more specifically don't anymore. And I'd like to see that come back, to be honest. Just, you know, some people do smoke. It's a character trait. Some more shots I mentioned before, sometimes where I feel like, you know, he and Greg Capullo and John Romita Jr. have a similar way of kind of composing and drawing faces. So that one's kind of similar to John Romita Jr. a little bit. And these are the shots, like I said, if you look up close now, I do feel like Quasar's looking a little bit more masculine than he was before. So maybe it's time to talk a little bit about that 90s aesthetic too in the inking. I definitely feel like in this issue, either Greg Capullo, the inker, or both have gotten a better handle on kind of that 90s style hatching, and they're doing a lot more of it, and it seems more consistent and just aesthetically more pleasing than it maybe was a few issues ago, where a few issues ago it feels like they were trying to do that kind of West Coast type look. Here it feels like they're just successfully doing it. Not much going on this page to talk about. This one's fun. I mean, you could almost assume, you know, other than the figure of Quasar here in the small little silhouette, this is almost abstract, right? It's the Soul Eater kind of, I guess, exploding out in space. But, you know, if you don't know what you're looking at here, it's basically some abstract art, really, is how I describe it. Very dynamic, very explosive. And, you know, since we are reading the story, we know what's going on here. But just like, I mean, as to actually having the job to draw this, not so easy, I think. And you kind of have to go in that abstract kind of direction for the cosmicness of it. The fact it's taking place in space with a huge kind of space god. You know, Capullo really goes all out here to create that effect. And I think it looks pretty good. And then we're back to our heroes here. They've gotten rid of the Soul Eater. So basically that's where the issue ends. We get a cool kind of team shot of all the characters here. And once again, you know, comparing to modern Greg Capullo, I feel like all of his basic anatomy, layout skills, body language skills are pretty much fully formed here. The only thing that's different is that more West Coast kind of 90s hatching aesthetic on top of it. You know, this would be right at home in Spawn with some McFarlane or Danny Miki inking on top of it. I recognize his facial structures, the way he draws the ladies. So pretty much, I think, at this point, Greg Capullo just about fully formed as far as like just the penciling and the layouts go. So very cool art in this issue. There you go, guys. That is my fairly short review of issue 36 of Quasar by Greg Capullo. If you are still watching and you are still subscribed, thank you so much for still sticking around and checking out my videos. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you. It helps the channel grow and it helps it get out to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So thank you once again, guys. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.